For the past couple of days, we've been in Death Valley scoping out sulfates and borates ourselves. But there's a slight change in scenery today. We're at a borate mine in Boron, California, which is why I have all this neat protective gear. Rio Tinto Borax Works has been really kind to us for letting us visit their mine and provided us with the guidance of their expert geologist who will tell us about different kinds of borates in nature. This is really important to understand for our research. We have Dr. Patrick Gazda from Los Alamos National Laboratory today. He's a planetary geologist who works with the ChemCam instrument on the Curiosity rover, and he discovered boron on Mars for the first time. He will be telling us why it's important to understand borates in nature on Earth and in Mars. So let's hear from him.
So boron is important for two main reasons. One is that boron is extremely soluble in water, and so you can use boron and measurements on Mars to track how water has moved through the subsurface of ancient Gale crater. The second reason is that borates will react with organic molecules in the subsurface. And what that does is it can preserve organics in the subsurface for measurements. So this place is really cool because it's a boron mine. It has tons of different types of borate minerals, kernite, ulexite, colemanite, and others. And it shows us, in a way, how different types of boron can be changed by processes on the Earth. And this is going to help us understand how these processes could occur on Mars. So on Mars, kind of the hypothesis that we have working right now is that you had a big crater, and that had an ancient lake in it. At some point in Mars history, Mars dried out from its warm and wet past to its kind of more arid, dry, current state. And during that transition period, you had a lot of lakes forming, drying out, and forming basically like a ply environment, which is a lot like what we see in Death Valley. So this continuous, over millions of years, creation of the lake, drying, and burial, and creates all these different layers of evaporites. So that's how you make borates in kind of the primary setting, but then we only find borates so far on Mars in veins. So what we think happened is that this rock was buried, it became fractured, and then groundwater moved through those fractures, dissolving a little bit of the borates as it went along, and then redepositing them up and down along these different fracture zones. So this is just an amazing looking outcrop. It's a block that was rolled here by the mine guys, and it's not a perfect analog for Mars, but this looks a whole lot like images we see on Mars. We have this clay stone here, and then these borate-rich veins have been moving kind of across it. So orient the rock in your mind like this, because it was like this when it was deposited, and now it's on its side. And so the veins were going along the bedding planes. But then, probably sometime after that, there was more fracturing and pressure on the rock, and more water coming through, and that caused these secondary veins that you can kind of see everywhere that are, crossing orthogonally across the main vein. So this is one vein in here that's covered with some clay, but this is an exposed piece where the clay has been worn away, probably by the mine, and it exposes this giant kind of flat piece of kernite. So of course, on Mars we're looking at calcium sulfate rich veins that have a little bit of borate in them. So this is not quite like a good analog, because these are basically totally borate with probably not much calcium sulfate in it. Nevertheless, these things form in almost the same way in water. So water coming through, fracturing the rocks, and then depositing evaporative materials. And this particular piece right here looks a lot like what you would see on Mars, where you have, opening up, and you have sort of like cracking in this kind of branching manner, and you see these little tiny veins, and they go from centimeter scale down to hairline fractures, basically. But ChemCam has this like pinpoint accuracy on Mars. And so we can shoot at this, and sometimes we accidentally hit these tiny veins too, because we have 100 to 500 micron spots. So, ChemCam is how we're measuring this on Mars.
Now that you have all this neat information about borates in nature, stay tuned for our next boron adventure.